This is like my 4th time making this video, but literally every golden perk has been changed since my last tier list, and somebody sent me an email asking for this video, so I think it's about time to make an update. Golden towers are essentially an upgraded version of an existing tower, usually having much better DPS, stats, and value. However, to obtain one, you need to purchase a golden crate, which costs an insane 50,000 coins, so it can be extremely helpful to know which golden perks are worth getting. In this video, I'll be ranking every single golden tower in TDS. I'll take a close look at their stats, values, and uses, then put them on the tier list depending on how good they are. So hit that like button and subscribe, and let's get started. For our first tower, we have the Golden Scout. This is a cheap, high value tower, almost exclusively being used in the early game. It attacks using a pistol, dealing single target damage. It costs 250 cash to place and deals 2.48 DPS, giving it a DPS cost ratio of 9.92. That is insanely good, being the highest value out of any tower if we ignore splash damage or any other gimmicks. When playing solo Fallen, we can get 2 Golden Scouts on wave 0, or 3 if we wait one more wave. By themselves, 3 Golden Scouts can defend until wave 5, as the beefy heavies are too much to handle. That's pretty solid, and it does this reliably and quickly. Undeniably, its great value makes it a really good early game tower, but the biggest issue with this tower is its disappointing max DPS. For 7,100 cash, a level 4 Golden Scout deals 49.02 DPS, which is pretty pathetic. This means the Golden Scout is basically only good in the early game, even struggling to transition to the mid game. Because of that, it will be a wasted slot for the rest of the game. You won't get any use out of it past the first 10 waves. Still, it is seriously good during those first 10 waves, and it can help you and your teammates get a big head start in your farming. However, there are many other towers like the Shotgunner or Brawler that can do amazing in the early game, but also do great in the mid to late game. So the Golden Scout ends up being pretty outclassed. I'm gonna rank it as a solid B tier. It's really good at one thing, but not much else. Next up, we have the Golden Cowboy, which is probably the most complicated tower on this list. It attacks using a revolver, which has to reload every 6 shots. When reloading, the Cowboy generates a bit of extra money, making it a mix between a farm and a tower. It costs 600 cash to place, and at level 0, it deals 2.65 DPS and generates 30 cash every 6 shots. From my testing, in the earlier waves, a level 0 Cowboy seems to make roughly 60 cash per wave. That's not bad, especially considering you don't have to worry about defense. Although it doesn't do great in the early game, only lasting until wave 2 in Fallen mode. Usually, I like to get 2 level 0 Golden Cowboys in Fallen mode, as those can defend up until wave 5 with only a couple of leaks. At level 5, for a total of 26,675 cash, they deal 64.8 DPS, giving them a DPS cost ratio of 3.55. That's not really that good value, but remember, this tower is generating cash. I was able to get to wave 19 in Fallen mode using only Golden Cowboys as my DPS and income, as the Fallen Jesters are a bit too much to handle, but that's still pretty impressive. Most other towers require at least some form of support or income, while the Golden Cowboy kinda does it all by itself. But let's take a closer look at its income. How good is it actually at generating extra cash? As previously mentioned, at level 0, it generates roughly 60 cash per wave. The best level in terms of making income is level 4, its max level is nearly 3 times as expensive and only generates 1.6 times as much money. If you upgrade it to level 4 for a total of 9,175 cash, on later waves, it seems to make around 600 cash every wave. You can get a max of 12 Golden Cowboys, allowing you to make roughly 7,200 cash each wave. That's pretty good, but still does get outclassed by the farm. 8 max level farms will make a total of 12,000 cash per wave and only cost a total of 76,000 cash. In comparison, 12 level 4 Golden Cowboys will cost a total of 110,100 cash. That is much more expensive for almost half the income. And while they do defend, they're not great at it. A level 4 Cowboy only deals 32.82 DPS and has a value of 3.58 DPS per 1k spent. So you might as well just bring the farm and spend the income you make on actually good value DPS towers like the Brawler. However, the Golden Cowboy is the only other additional form of income, unless you consider the DJ's green track ability, which barely makes anything. Realistically, in most scenarios, you're always going to be better off using the farm instead of the Golden Cowboy. But if you want some extra money or need a much more DPS focused loadout and can't bring any kind of early game tower or farm, then the Golden Cowboy can be a good choice. Because of that, I'm going to put it at the top of A tier. It's outclassed, but because you don't have many other options and it does make some good income, it's not a bad choice. Next up, we have the Golden Minigunner. This is a high DPS tower attacking using a minigun. It has a short delay before attacking, having to rev up its weapon. However, it fires continuously until there are no enemies in range. It's pretty pricey, costing 3,000 cash to place. This means you won't be using it in the early game, and it's strictly a mid to late game tower. At level 0, it deals 23.44 DPS, giving it a DPS cost ratio of 7.81. That's really good value, and considering that it's a pretty consistent tower, this means it's a good idea to save up for and use a Golden Minigunner as your first form of DPS. For a total of 37,950 cash, a level 4 Golden Minigunner deals an impressive 222.22 DPS. While its value isn't as good at max level, only being 5.86 DPS per 1k spent, it deals insane damage. 222.22 DPS is very high, and makes this a fantastic late game tower. It also has decent range, being 18 at max level. This, paired with the fact that it attacks continuously after revving up, makes this a pretty consistent tower, especially compared to something like the Accelerator. On top of that, it has a great placement limit of 15, meaning the max DPS you can get using this tower is 3,333.3, which is amazing. This tower will be able to shred almost anything. It even gets hidden detection after level 2, so it can take care of shadow bosses. Its rev up time is a bit long at max level, level being 2.25, but if that's an issue, you can just spam level 3 golden minigunners. They have a much shorter rev up of 0.75 seconds and better value anyways. The only issue with this tower would be the fact that it doesn't have any form of crowd control, but usually you can bring another tower to take care of that. This tower is a fantastic late game option with good consistency and great value. It's one of the best DPS towers available, so it's going to be the first S tier of this video. It consistently deals a ton of DPS and has insane value in its earlier levels. For our next tower, we have the golden pyromancer. This tower attacks using a flamethrower, being able to hit multiple enemies at a time. It deals both normal DPS and applies a burn effect that gradually deals damage. This tower was actually recently buffed, so if you want to see the changes it received, check out this video I made about it. Anyways, it costs 800 cash to place, meaning you'll have to wait one wave before you can place it. At level 0, it deals 4.88 DPS and can hit up to 4 enemies. That means against a crowd, the golden pyro will usually deal up to 19.52 DPS, giving it a value of 24.4. That is fantastic, making it a great crowd control option in the early game. Unfortunately, it still struggles with the heavies on wave 5, but this is a bottleneck wave, so most early game towers can't get past it. You shouldn't expect it to deal with any bosses by itself, but it will easily clear any crowd that goes along them. For example, a level 3 golden pyromancer destroys the hiddens on wave 10, allowing your other towers to take care of the fallen squire. The golden pyro is actually especially good at handling the hiddens on this wave, as due to how its flamethrower attack works, it can still attack the hidden enemies despite targeting the aggro squire. At max level, for a total of 18,900 cash, it deals 47.01 DPS and can hit up to 10 enemies. That means it can deal a potential 470.1 DPS. That gives it a value of 24.87 DPS per 1k spent, which is incredible. So, the golden pyromancer is a great option against crowds in the early, mid, and late game, as it has a cheap placement cost, good value, and a high max DPS. But not only does it do really well against crowds, it also provides support in the form of defense melting. At max level, it melts 10% defense every tick, with minus 50% being the max amount. While not every enemy has a defense stat, this can be extremely useful against certain bosses, like the nuclear guardians and polluted wastelands, who have a 50% defense stat. Because of its amazing value, usability throughout the entire game, fantastic crowd control, and defense melting, I'm going to rank it as an S tier, one spot above the golden minigunner. The golden minigunner is amazing, but personally, I think the pyromancer is more dominant in its own niche, with there not being many great early game crowd control towers that are useful throughout the entire game and provide support. In comparison, there are plenty of really good DPS towers, and even some that outclass the golden minigunner. Next up, we have the golden soldier. This tower attacks using a rifle, shooting bursts of bullets at enemies. It costs 500 cash to place, meaning you can get it on the first wave. At level 0, it deals 3.38 DPS, giving it a value of 6.76 DPS per 1k spent. However, in most cases, you'll want to upgrade it to level 1, as it only costs an extra 150 cash for a total of 650. At level 1, it does 4.2 DPS, giving it a value of 6.41 DPS per 1k spent. That's pretty high and lets it do well in the early game, defending into wave 5 in fallen mode. It also gets hidden detection at level 2, so it can be an option against the hiddens on wave 10. However, you'll have to get multiple, as you need to kill the squire with aggro before you can attack the hiddens. For me, 3 level 2 golden soldiers seems to be enough. So far, this tower may just seem like a lower value version of the golden scout, but it does have some key advantages. First of all, it has hidden and flying detection, giving it better coverage, especially in hardcore mode. But most importantly, it has significantly more DPS at max level. At level 5, the golden soldier deals 92.59 DPS, which is 1.88 times as much as the golden scout. A max level golden soldier costs a total of 16,450 cash, giving it a value of 5.63 DPS per 1k spent. Now, this isn't enough to be considered a DPS tower, however, it can be a viable option for sub DPS. Once you've placed down 8 max accelerators, it can be useful to have an additional tower to squeeze out a little bit more damage, and since this tower has no placement limit, good value, and decent DPS, it's a pretty good option. And having a higher max DPS makes it an early to mid game tower instead of strictly being an early game tower like the golden scout. Because of that, I'm going to rank it as a solid A tier, one spot above the golden cowboy. The golden scout and golden soldier basically do the same thing, but the golden soldier is just more versatile. However, in terms of early game and as a sub DPS, it is outclassed by other options, which is why I didn't put it in S tier. Something like the brawler does great in the early game and can get up to 329.82 DPS, making it a better early game option and sub DPS than the golden soldier. And the reason why I placed it above the golden cowboy is because overall I think the golden soldier ends up being more useful. The golden cowboy is heavily outclassed by the farm, and I only really put it in A tier because it's the only other option of reliable income. As our last golden perk, we have the golden crook boss. This tower attacks using a pistol, which later upgrades into a fast firing Tommy gun. On top of that, it periodically summons units to help defend, which gets stronger at later levels. It costs 800 cash to place, so you have to wait one wave before you can place it. At level 0, it deals 4.41 DPS, giving it a value of 5.51. That's pretty solid, and that's without considering its units. It summons one pistol crook every 50 seconds, which has 25 health and deals 4.93 DPS. In combination with its units, it actually does really well in the early game, just barely defending until wave 7 in fallen mode. Unfortunately, it's not very quick, as you have to be patient and let the units clean up the leaks, and it's pretty dependent on the map, as it does a lot better on longer maps. But if you don't care about speedrunning, then this is a great choice for the early game. For 38,800 cash total, the max level golden crook boss does 185.19 DPS. That's a value of 4.77, which is alright. Although, again, this is without considering its units, and trust me, at this level, the units units make a big difference. It summons 2 pistol crooks every 50 seconds and 1 bodyguard every 50 seconds, which has 225 health and deals an impressive 111.11 DPS. Let's assume that at least 2 pistol crooks and 1 Tommy crook are attacking at all times. If we also account for their health, that's an added 126.47 DPS. That gives the max golden crook boss a total of 311.66 DPS and a value of 8.03. That is really good value, and on top of that, it has a placement limit of 5, meaning the max DPS you can get using this tower is 1558.3. That's pretty solid, especially considering its fantastic value. On top of this, it has both hidden and flying detection. This tower can be considered a jack of all trades. It is great in the early, mid, and late game. It has fantastic value and amazing coverage. It can basically do everything and do it well. So because of that, I'm going to rank it as an S tier, 1 spot above the golden pyromancer, making this, in my opinion, the best golden perk in TDS. It's just such a good tower, and it will pretty much do good in every single game. The only reason I didn't put it in S+ is because sometimes it can struggle against bosses who spam attacks, as those tend to kill its units. Also, because a lot of its DPS come from units, it can be a bit unreliable. And with that, that's it for this video. This on screen is the final tier list, so let me know in the comments below if you would change anything and whether or not you agree with me. I really hope they don't immediately make this video outdated, but if they do, I guess I'll just have to make another one. And if you enjoyed, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to join the Blue Head Mafia. Also, if you want to talk to me, consider checking out my Discord. We got some pretty cool features, like a custom party finder bot that will automatically pair you up with other people who are trying to do the same strategy. There's a link to the server pinned in the comments. And finally, I want to give a huge shout out to these channel members for supporting my content. If you want to add me as a friend on Roblox or get early access to some of my videos, consider becoming a channel member. It helps me out a lot and I really appreciate it. Anyways, that's it for this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.